I know how this is going to sound. A week ago, I gave my engagement ring back because of a pink vibrator. Even writing that sentence makes me feel ridiculous. Like I'm shrinking 2 years of love, fear, hope, and exhaustion into one small object. If a stranger heard only that, they might laugh or assume I was being dramatic. But that is not really why I left. I did not leave because of a toy. I left because of what happened when I tried to leave with it. I left because, for the first time, the fear I had been swallowing for months became impossible to explain away. I am 29. My fiancé, or I guess now my ex-fiancé, is 46. We had been together for 2 years, and until last week, we lived together on a narrow boat. From the outside, it sounded romantic. A little home on the water, quiet mornings, rain tapping against the roof, coffee in a tiny kitchen while the canal moved softly outside the windows. And sometimes it really was beautiful. That is the part I need people to understand. He was not cruel every second of every day. If he had been, maybe leaving would have been easier. There were mornings when he made me tea before I even asked. There were nights when he pulled me close and talked about the future like it was something solid, something we could step into together. There were moments when he looked at me with so much tenderness that I felt chosen, safe, loved. Those moments were real. That is what made everything else so confusing, because there was another version of him too. That version drank too much. That version came home angry at friends, clients, coworkers, strangers, anyone who had made him feel disrespected that day. That version needed me to agree with him completely, immediately, and for as long as it took for his anger to burn itself out. If I said the wrong thing or the right thing in the wrong tone, a normal evening could turn into hours of emotional punishment. Living on a boat sounds romantic until the person you love is drunk, angry, and standing between you and the only way out. A narrowboat does not give you much space to avoid someone. There are no spare rooms to disappear into, no hallway wide enough to pass each other without feeling the tension in your body. When he was happy, the boat felt warm and private, like our own little world. When he was angry, it felt like a locked box. I learned to listen before I stepped inside. I learned to notice how much he had drunk. I learned to read his face, his silence, the way he set a glass down, the way he breathed through his nose when he was trying not to explode yet. I stopped coming home wondering what we were having for dinner. I came home wondering who had upset him, how much alcohol was already in him, and whether I would be allowed to sleep that night. Still, I stayed. I stayed because he could be so sweet afterward. I stayed because he always had a reason. Stress, work, money, people disrespecting him, people failing him. I stayed because I kept thinking love was supposed to be patient. And maybe if I loved him carefully enough, calmly enough, correctly enough, he would finally feel safe and stop making me feel unsafe. A few months ago, he proposed to me on a beach in Greece. It was beautiful. The kind of beautiful that makes you want to forget every warning sign that came before it. I said yes, because I wanted the man on that beach to be the only version of him that existed. But he was not. And last week, on the boat we were supposed to call home, something very small finally showed me the whole truth. When I first met him, I did not see danger. I saw confidence. He was 17 years older than me, and at the time, that did not scare me the way people probably think it should have. If anything, it made him seem steady. I was 27 then, still trying to figure out what kind of life I wanted, still carrying a lot of uncertainty about myself. He seemed like someone who had already been through the messy parts of life and come out knowing exactly who he was. He had stories about everything: places he had been, jobs he had done, people he had known, mistakes he said he had learned from. He spoke with the kind of certainty that made me feel like I could stop overthinking for a while and just lean into him. At first, that felt comforting. He made me feel protected. Not controlled, not then. Protected. He would put his hand on the small of my back when we crossed a busy street. He would make sure I had eaten if I had been working late. He remembered small details like how I took my tea, what kind of music made me emotional, which side of the bed I liked. If I seemed anxious, he noticed. If I was quiet, he asked why. There was an intensity to his attention that felt flattering before it felt frightening, and the boat made everything feel even more intimate. It was his boat, technically. He had bought it before me, but when I moved in, he told me he wanted it to feel like ours. He said he had never imagined sharing that space with someone the way he wanted to share it with me. He talked about building a quiet life together, one that did not look like everyone else's. No big house, no pointless things, just us, the water, and a future we chose on our own terms. I love that idea. I loved waking up to the sound of water against the side of the boat. I loved the small kitchen, even though there was barely enough room for both of us to stand in it. I loved the way the light came through the windows in the morning. I loved how separate it felt from the rest of the world, like we had found a hidden place where normal rules did not apply. For a while, I thought that meant freedom. Looking back, I think part of me also liked being needed. He had this way of making me feel like I was the only person who truly understood him. He told me people always disappointed him. Friends let him down, clients took advantage, coworkers disrespected him, family did not appreciate him. But I was different, he said. I listened, I got him. I saw the good in him when other people only saw his anger. At the time, that felt special. Now I understand how heavy that was. Because slowly, without me noticing at first, being the person who understood him turned into being the person responsible for calming him down. The early signs were easy to excuse. A friend did not reply to his message quickly enough, and he would spend the evening calling them selfish. A client asked a question he thought was stupid, and he would rant about being surrounded by idiots. A coworker made a comment he took as disrespectful, and suddenly the whole night revolved around how wrong everyone else was. At first, I thought he was just venting. Everyone vents. Everyone has bad days. Everyone says things they do not fully mean when they are frustrated. That was what I told myself. But his frustration had rules. If he was angry, I had to agree. Not gently, not halfway, completely. If I tried to soften it by saying, maybe they didn't mean it like that, his face would change. His eyes would go flat. His voice would sharpen. Suddenly, the problem was not the friend, or the client, or the coworker anymore. It was me. So you're taking their side? That sentence became something I dreaded. I learned quickly that there was only one safe answer. No, I'm on your side. You're right. And sometimes that worked. Sometimes he would calm down enough to pull me close, kiss my forehead, and tell me he did not know what he would do without me. Those were the moments that kept me hooked. The storm would pass, and afterward he would be so soft that I could almost convince myself the storm had not been as bad as it felt. But there were other nights when even agreeing was not enough. He needed me to repeat it. Again and again, he needed me to match his anger, to confirm every insult, every accusation, every version of the story where he was the victim and everyone else was cruel, stupid, or beneath him. If my energy dropped, he noticed. If my voice sounded tired, he accused me of not caring. If I got quiet, he said I was making him feel alone. So I performed. I became gentle when I wanted to scream. I became patient when I was exhausted. I became careful with every word, every breath, every expression on my face. And because he could still be wonderful the next morning, I kept telling myself the bad parts were temporary. I told myself the sweet version was the real him. The angry version was stress. The drinking was stress. The cruelty was stress. The long nights of being cornered into agreement were just what happened when a wounded man did not know how to ask for comfort. I thought if I loved him well enough, the good side would win. That was the trap. The problem with loving someone who has two sides is that you keep believing the cruel side is temporary and the sweet side is the truth. You keep waiting for the man who holds you afterward to become strong enough to stop being the man who hurt you before. And for a while, I waited. I waited because I loved him. I waited because the boat still felt like home when he was kind. I waited because every time I thought about leaving, I remembered the way he looked at me on good days, like I was the only soft thing left in his world. I did not understand yet that being someone's soft place should not mean becoming the place where they throw all their pain. At first, the boat felt like proof that our relationship was different. Most people our age were talking about mortgages, rent increases, spare bedrooms, garden space, all the normal things people build their lives around. We had something smaller, stranger, and, in my mind, more romantic. A narrow boat was not practical in the way a house was practical, but that was part of what I loved about it. It felt intentional. It felt like choosing a life instead of just falling into one. In the mornings, when everything was calm, I could almost believe we had made the perfect choice. The light would come in softly through the small windows. The water would move against the side of the boat with this quiet, repetitive sound that made the whole place feel alive. Sometimes ducks would pass by outside like nosy little neighbors. The kitchen was tiny, but when we were both in good moods, even bumping into each other felt sweet. He would reach past me for a mug, kiss my shoulder, and tell me there was nowhere else he would rather be. On those mornings, I believed him. I believed in the little world we had made. But small spaces do not only make love feel closer, they make anger closer too. That was something I did not understand until I was living inside it. A normal home gives you places to go. A bedroom, a bathroom, a hallway. A door you can close and stand behind for a minute while you breathe. Even if the person you live with is upset, there is usually some kind of distance you can create. A few walls, a staircase, a room where their voice becomes muffled. A narrow boat does not give you that. On our boat, everything carried. Every sigh, every muttered insult. Every cabinet closed too hard. Every glass set down with just enough force to make me flinch. If he was angry at one end of the boat, I could feel it at the other. It moved through the space like smoke. There were no real corners to disappear into, no spare room, no easy way to pass each other without turning sideways. The hallway was narrow enough that if he stood in it, I had to ask him to move or squeeze past him. And when he was angry, even asking him to move felt like starting another fight. The boat made his mood impossible to avoid. When he was happy, it felt intimate. When he was angry, it felt like a locked box. I started to develop little habits I did not recognize as fear at the time. Before stepping inside, I would pause and listen, not for anything dramatic, just for the tone of the evening. Was the TV too loud? Was he moving around heavily? Was he talking to himself? Was there music playing or silence? Silence was not always peaceful. Sometimes silence meant he was waiting. I would open the door and immediately scan the space. A bottle on the counter, a glass near his chair, his shoulders stiff, his jaw tight, his phone face down beside him, which usually meant someone had annoyed him and he had decided not to reply yet because he wanted to be angry about it first. I became very good at noticing alcohol without looking like I was noticing alcohol. How full was the bottle? Was there one glass or two? Had he been drinking slowly, or had he already crossed that invisible line where his voice got heavier and his patience disappeared? I never asked directly unless I was ready for the fight that question might cause. I stopped coming home wondering what we were having for dinner. I came home wondering how much he had drunk, who had upset him, and whether I would be allowed to sleep that night. That sounds extreme, but that was what it became. If he was angry and wanted to talk, the night belonged to him. It did not matter if I was tired. It did not matter if I had work the next day. It did not matter if the same point had already been made 10 times. On the boat, there was no polite way to leave the conversation. There was nowhere to go that was not still within reach of his voice. If I sat quietly, he said I was ignoring him. If I tried to go to bed, he said I was abandoning him. If I cried, he said I was making it about myself. If I argued back, he suddenly became calm and told me I was out of control. And because the space was so small, even my body started to feel like it was doing something wrong. If I shifted on the sofa, he noticed. If I looked toward the door, he noticed. If I checked the time, he noticed. Am I boring you? Do you want to leave? Why are you acting like you're scared of me? I never knew how to answer that last one, because by then, I was scared. Not always in a dramatic way, not always in a way I could explain to someone else. It was not constant screaming or constant threats. It was smaller than that, and somehow that made it easier to deny. It was the way my stomach tightened when I heard his key. It was the way I measured my words before speaking. It was the way I could not fully relax unless he was asleep. It was the way the boat only felt like home when his mood allowed it to. There was only one narrow way out. At the time, I tried not to think about that. I told myself I was being silly. I told myself he had never truly trapped me. I told myself a lot of things. But somewhere in my body, I knew. The boat that had once felt like freedom had slowly become a place where I was always checking the exits. And the worst part was, I still loved him inside it. His anger rarely started with me. That was one of the things that made it so hard to explain. If he had come home every night angry because of something I had done, maybe I would have understood the pattern sooner. Maybe I would have seen it more clearly. But most of the time, I was not the beginning of the storm. I was just where the storm landed. It could be anything. A friend did not reply to him quickly enough. A client asked too many questions. A coworker made a comment he thought was disrespectful. Someone at the pub looked at him the wrong way. A family member gave advice he did not ask for. Sometimes it was so small that I would not even understand why it mattered. But to him, everything meant something. A delayed text was rejection. A neutral comment was an insult. A mistake was disrespect. A disagreement was betrayal. And once he had decided he had been wronged, there was only one role available for me. I had to agree. Not comfort him in the normal way. Not listen and say, "That sounds frustrating." Not help him calm down or see things from another angle. That was not what he wanted. He wanted confirmation. He wanted me to sit there and tell him he was right. Completely right. Obviously right. Unquestionably right. If he said someone had disrespected him, I had to say they had. If he said they were horrible people, I had to agree. If he called them selfish, stupid, arrogant, cruel, I had to nod along like every word made perfect sense. And if I hesitated, even for a second, he felt it. At first, I made the mistake of trying to be reasonable. One night, he came home furious about a coworker. I do not even remember exactly what the man had said. Something small, I think. A joke that landed badly or a comment that made my fiancé feel undermined. He came in already heated, already a few drinks in, pacing through the narrow space of the boat like the anger had nowhere to go except through him. He knew what he was doing, he said. He was trying to make me look stupid. I remember sitting on the sofa trying to keep my voice soft. Maybe he didn't mean it like that, I said. The change in his face was immediate. It was like a door closing. He stopped pacing and looked at me. So you're taking his side? My stomach dropped. No, I said quickly. I'm not taking his side. I just mean maybe it wasn't intentional. But you don't know that, he snapped. You weren't there. So why are you defending him? I'm not defending him. You are. You always do this. That was how it always shifted. 1 second, he was angry at someone else. The next, I was the problem. I had failed some test I did not know I was taking. I had not been loyal enough. I had not understood him enough. I had made him feel alone. And then the night would stretch. He would sit down, stand up, pour another drink, repeat the same story, then demand my agreement again. He was out of order, wasn't he? Yes. No, say it like you mean it. He was out of order, and I didn't do anything wrong. No, you didn't do anything wrong. And he's always been like that. You see it, don't you? Yes, I see it. Sometimes I would hear myself speaking and feel like I had left my own body. I was not having a conversation. I was reciting lines. I was giving him the exact emotional response he needed so the night might end before morning. But it rarely ended quickly. He could keep going for hours. If I looked tired, he accused me of not caring. If I checked my phone, he said I was bored of him. If I tried to make tea or go to the bathroom, he acted as if I was escaping. If I said, "Can we talk about this tomorrow?" he said I was abandoning him when he needed me. So I stayed. I sat there under the yellow light of the boat, listening to him circle the same anger again and again, trying to keep my face open, my voice warm, my body still. I learned not to offer solutions. Solutions made him angrier. I learned not to ask too many questions. Questions sounded like doubt. I learned not to say, "I understand how you feel," unless I followed it with, "And you're right." Because understanding was not enough. He needed agreement, total agreement. Anything less felt, to him, like betrayal. There were nights when I could feel myself disappearing in real time. I would have opinions in my head that I never said out loud. I would think, maybe your friend was just busy. Maybe your coworker was awkward, not malicious. Maybe the client was just asking for clarification. Maybe not every person who upsets you is trying to humiliate you. But I swallowed all of it. Instead, I became what he needed. A mirror, a soft voice, a witness for the prosecution in a trial, where he was always innocent and everyone else was guilty. The drinking made it worse. He had always liked drinking, but over time it became part of the rhythm of our life. A drink after work. A drink because he was stressed. A drink because he was celebrating. A drink because he was angry. A drink because the day had been long. There was always a reason. And I was 3 years sober. That made it harder in a way I struggled to explain to him. Sobriety had taught me to pay attention to chaos. To notice when a room changed. To notice when someone's voice thickened or their judgment slipped. I knew what alcohol could do to a person's mood, their memory, their version of events, but whenever I brought it up, even gently, he treated it like an attack. You think you're better than me because you don't drink? No, I would say. I just get worried. Don't project your issues onto me. So I stopped saying it. I stopped saying a lot of things. The more I stayed silent, the more peaceful things seemed from the outside. But inside me, something was tightening. I was becoming careful in a way that did not feel like love. I was careful when I opened the door, careful when I asked how his day was, careful when I answered, careful when I breathed too heavily during one of his rants, careful when I looked at the clock, careful when I went to bed. And when I finally did break, when I finally snapped back or cried or raised my voice, he would change. That was the part that confused me the most. After hours of ranting, swearing, accusing, pushing, and demanding emotional loyalty from me, the moment I reacted, he became calm. Not kind, calm. He would lower his voice. Sit back. Look at me like I was embarrassing myself. Look at you, he would say. You're completely out of control. I would be shaking by then, exhausted, cornered, sometimes crying so hard I could barely speak. And he would say, I'm trying to have a normal conversation. You're the one escalating. That calm voice was worse than the yelling. The yelling scared me, but the calm voice made me doubt myself. It made me wonder if I was the unstable one, if I really was too emotional, if maybe I had caused the whole thing by not being supportive enough, patient enough, loving enough. That was how the cycle worked. He would explode. I would endure it. I would eventually react. Then he would point to my reaction as proof that I was the problem. And afterward, when everything was quiet, he would soften again. He would apologize just enough to keep me close, but not enough to truly take responsibility. He would tell me he loved me. He would say he had never felt understood by anyone the way he felt understood by me. And I would believe him because I wanted to, because the good moments were still there, because the next morning he might make me tea and kiss the top of my head and look ashamed enough that I could pretend shame was the same as change. But it was not change. It was just the quiet part of the cycle. And still, somehow, when he proposed to me in Greece, I said yes. Greece should have been the memory I held onto forever. For a while, I thought it would be. We had gone there a few months before everything ended, and I remember arriving with this quiet hope I was almost afraid to admit to myself. Being away from the boat felt like being able to step outside our usual pattern. No narrow hallway, no familiar sofa where I had sat through so many of his rants. No tiny kitchen where I had learned to move around him carefully. No canal outside the window reminding me that our whole life had become smaller than I wanted to admit. In Greece, everything felt open. The sky was wide. The water was impossibly blue. The air was warm in a way that made my body loosen without me realizing how tense I had been. For the first couple of days, I let myself believe distance could change us. Maybe the problem was stress. Maybe it was work. Maybe it was the boat. Maybe being somewhere beautiful would remind him how to be gentle and remind me how to trust him. And he was gentle. That was the hardest part. He held my hand while we walked through little streets lined with white walls and bright flowers. He bought me coffee in the mornings and kissed my forehead in public, like he was proud to be with me. He made me laugh in restaurants. He took pictures of me when I was not looking and told me I was beautiful in this voice that sounded so sincere, it made my chest ache. For a few days, I got the version of him I had been waiting for. The sweet version, the soft version, the version that made me feel stupid for ever doubting him. One evening, he suggested we walk down to the beach before dinner. The sun was starting to lower, turning everything gold. The water looked almost unreal. like something painted. I remember the wind moving through my hair and the sound of waves folding into themselves. I remember thinking that he seemed nervous, but in a sweet way, not an angry one. Then he stopped walking. He turned toward me, and he got down on one knee. For a second, I did not understand what was happening. My mind went completely blank. Then I saw the ring, and my hands flew to my mouth, and he was saying all the things I had wanted so badly to hear. He said I was his home. He said no one had ever understood him the way I did. He said he wanted to spend the rest of his life with me. And in that moment, with the sea behind him and the sky turning pink above us, I believed in the future he was offering. I believed in the man kneeling in front of me. I wanted him to be real so badly. So I said yes. I said yes with tears in my eyes. I said yes while strangers nearby smiled and clapped softly. I said yes while he slipped the ring onto my finger and pulled me into his arms. I said yes because I loved him and because some part of me thought maybe this was proof. Proof that the bad nights were not the whole story. Proof that he wanted to be better. Proof that we were moving towards something safer. That night, I kept looking at the ring on my hand. It was beautiful. He was beautiful to me then. I remember thinking, this is what I have been waiting for. This is the turning point. This is the moment we leave the worst parts behind. The next day, everything cracked again. It started with drinking. He had been drinking heavily on the holiday, more than I was comfortable with. I tried not to count because counting made me feel controlling, and I knew how he reacted when he felt judged. But when you are sober, you notice alcohol. You notice how early someone starts. You notice how quickly one drink becomes several. You notice the shift in their eyes, their posture, their patience. By that point, he was drinking around 20 units a day. I was 3 years sober. That number sat in my mind like a warning light. I did not want to ruin the holiday. I did not want to be his mother. I did not want to start a fight the day after getting engaged. So I waited until what I thought was a calm moment, and I asked as gently as I could, "Do you maybe want to slow down a little today?" That was all. I did not call him drunk. I did not accuse him of anything. I did not tell him he had a problem. I just asked if he wanted to slow down. His face changed. Not dramatically at first. It was smaller than that. His mouth tightened. His eyes cooled. The warmth from the night before disappeared so quickly, it made me feel like I had imagined it. "Seriously?" he said. I felt my stomach drop. "I'm not having a go at you," I said. "I just worry." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Right, because you're sober. So now you get to monitor me?" "That's not what I'm doing." "It is exactly what you're doing." And just like that, I was back in the old pattern. The beach, the ring, the beautiful words from the night before. None of it protected me. I was once again trying to explain my tone, my intention, my concern. I was once again trying to prove I was not attacking him. I was once again watching him turn my worry into betrayal. The rest of the day became heavy. He did not explode in the loudest way. That might have almost been easier to understand. Instead, he sulked. He withdrew. He answered me with clipped sentences. He drank anyway, but now every drink felt like a punishment, like he was making sure I knew I had no right to ask. I walked beside him through paradise, feeling lonelier than I had felt on the boat. Every time the ring caught the sunlight, I felt confused. Yesterday, it had looked like a promise. That day, it felt like a question. I kept telling myself not to overreact. Couples fight on holiday. People get defensive. Engagements are emotional. Maybe I had chosen the wrong moment. Maybe I had made him feel judged. Maybe I needed to be more patient. But beneath all those excuses, a quieter thought was forming. If one gentle question could ruin the day after our engagement, what would marriage look like? I tried to push that thought away. I did not want it. I wanted the beach. I wanted the proposal. I wanted the man who had looked up at me with tears in his eyes and asked me to build a life with him. I wanted to freeze that version of him and live there. But I could not, because every beautiful memory I had with him seemed to come with a shadow attached to it. A perfect dinner, followed by a drunken argument. A soft morning, followed by an evening of walking on eggshells. A proposal in paradise, followed by the same cold anger I knew too well. He gave me a ring in Greece, and the next day, he reminded me why I was afraid to wear it. By the time we came home, I did not say that out loud. I barely admitted it to myself. But something inside me had shifted. Not enough to leave yet, not enough to call it over. Just enough that, somewhere deep down, a part of me had started quietly stepping away. The argument about the fries should have been nothing. That is what still gets me. It was such a small, stupid thing. The kind of mistake that should have been fixed with an apology, maybe a laugh, maybe a quick offer to go back out or order something else. I had picked up takeout for us, and somewhere between ordering, paying, carrying everything back, and trying to get through the day without feeling completely drained, I forgot his fries. That was it. No betrayal, no insult, no hidden meaning. Just forgotten fries. But by then, small things did not stay small with him. The moment he realized they were missing, I felt the air change. It was almost physical, the way it moved through the boat. His face tightened. His voice dropped into that tone I had learned to dread, the one that sounded calm only because the anger underneath it was being held back on purpose. "Are you serious?" he said. I looked at the bag, then back at him. "I'm sorry," I said. "I must have forgotten them. I can go back, or we can—" He cut me off. "You always do this." My body went tired before my mind even caught up. Not scared first, not angry first, tired. That was how I knew something in me had changed. Before, I would have rushed to fix it. I would have apologized again, explained that I had not meant to, offered 3 solutions, softened my voice, touched his arm, tried to bring him back down before the night became another one of those nights. But standing there with the takeout bag in my hand, listening to him turn fries into disrespect, I felt something inside me go flat. He said I did not think about him. He said I was careless. He said he was always an afterthought. He said if it had been something for me, I would have remembered. I tried once, maybe twice, to say it was just a mistake, but the words felt pointless before they even left my mouth. I already knew what would happen. He would not hear the apology. He would hear resistance. He would not hear an explanation. He would hear me refusing to admit I had failed him in some deeper, more personal way. The fries were no longer fries. They were evidence. Evidence that I did not care. Evidence that I did not respect him. Evidence that he gave more than he received. Evidence that the whole world, including me, was against him in ways only he seemed able to see. And I just could not do it. I could not spend another night proving my love over a missing side order. I remember putting the food down. I remember hearing my own voice, quiet and strange, saying, "I can't do this tonight." That made him angrier. Of course it did. Because leaving the argument was never allowed unless he was finished with it. He followed me with words as I moved through the boat. Accusations, sarcasm, that bitter laugh he used when he wanted me to feel stupid. He asked where I thought I was going. He said I was being dramatic. He said normal people did not run away every time there was a disagreement, but it did not feel like a disagreement. It felt like drowning in a cup of water. I packed a few things and went to my mom's. I had done that before, more times than I liked admitting. Whenever the boat became unbearable, whenever his anger filled every inch of it until there was no air left for me, I would leave. Sometimes for a night, sometimes for a couple of days. Long enough for him to cool down, long enough for me to sleep, long enough for both of us to pretend the space between us was a solution. This time, I stayed away for 4 days. At first, I slept more than anything. Not peaceful sleep exactly. More like my body shutting down because it finally had permission. At my mom's house, no one followed me from room to room demanding that I respond correctly. No one turned the TV up because I wanted quiet. No one made me feel cruel for needing rest. No one sat beside me with a drink in hand, waiting for me to agree that everyone else had ruined his life. The silence there felt different. On the boat, silence was something I had to interpret. Silence could mean anger, punishment, a storm gathering behind his teeth. At my mom's, silence was just silence. A kettle boiling, a door closing softly, someone moving around downstairs. Ordinary sounds, safe sounds. I did not realize how strange peace had become to me until I had it again. For those 4 days, I kept expecting my phone to pull me back into the cycle. I checked it too often. I felt guilty when he messaged. I felt guilty when he did not. Part of me missed him, or maybe I missed the version of him I always hoped would appear after enough time apart. But another part of me was relieved in a way I could not ignore. I was relieved not to scan the room for bottles, relieved not to measure my tone, relieved not to wonder whether I would be allowed to sleep, relieved not to feel someone else's mood sitting on my chest. That was when I realized peace did not feel exciting. It felt unfamiliar, and that scared me, because it meant I had been living without it for a long time. By the 4th day, I knew I could not keep running to my mom's every time he made the boat unbearable. That was not a life. That was not a relationship. That was not what being engaged was supposed to feel like. Still, I was not ready to call it over. Not completely. There was still that stubborn, aching part of me that wanted one calm conversation, one adult conversation. One moment where he would look at me and understand that I was not trying to punish him. I was trying to tell him I was tired. I was trying to tell him I felt disrespected. I was trying to tell him that if things did not change, I did not know how to stay. So after 4 days, I went back. Not because I felt safe, not because I had forgiven everything, but because I thought maybe after all the arguments, all the leaving, all the coming back, we deserved one final chance to speak gently before everything broke. I did not know then that everything had already broken. I was just about to see it. When I got back to the boat, I stood outside for a moment before going in. I remember that clearly. It was not dramatic. There was no music, no rain, no big cinematic feeling. Just me standing there with my hand near the door, looking at the place I had called home and trying to convince my body it was safe to step inside. The boat looked the same as it always did from the outside. Small, familiar, almost harmless. If someone had walked past me then, they probably would have seen a woman hesitating outside her own front door and thought nothing of it. But I was listening. That had become habit by then. I listened for his voice, for the TV, for movement, for the sharp sound of a glass being placed down too hard, for any sign of what version of him was waiting inside. I told myself I was not going in to fight. I was going in to talk. That was the whole reason I had come back. After 4 days at my mom's, after sleeping and thinking and missing him and resenting him and feeling guilty for both, I had decided we needed one calm conversation. Not another screaming match. Not another night where I apologized for things I had not done just to make the air safe again. A conversation. That was all I wanted. I had rehearsed the words in my head on the way there. I had made them gentle, careful, non-accusing. The kind of words you choose when you already know the truth might be punished if it comes out too sharply. I wanted to say, I don't feel respected when we argue. I wanted to say, I can't keep leaving the boat every time you're angry. I wanted to say, I love you, but I'm tired of being scared of your moods. But even in my own head, I softened that last one. I was not ready to say scared. So I told myself I would say tired instead. Tired sounded less threatening. Tired sounded like something he might be able to hear. When I finally opened the door and stepped inside, I knew almost immediately that the conversation was not going to happen. He had been drinking. I did not need to ask. I could see it in the glass near him, in the heaviness of his posture, in the way his eyes moved to me, and then away again like I was already in irritation. The boat smelled faintly of alcohol, stale warmth, and the kind of silence that never meant peace. He did not get up. He did not ask if I was okay. He barely greeted me. That hurt more than I wanted it to. Part of me had hoped, stupidly maybe, that 4 days apart would have softened him, that he would see me come in and realize he had missed me, that he would say, "Can we talk?" before I had to, that he would be sorry in a way that did not need to be dragged out of him. Instead, he looked cold, not loud, not explosive, cold. I hated that version almost more than the shouting version. When he shouted, at least the danger had a shape. It was ugly, but it was visible. The cold version was different. The cold version made the whole boat feel like it was holding its breath. He would go quiet, stiff, clipped. He would answer with 1 or 2 words. He would make me feel as if my very presence was an insult he had not decided how to punish yet. I put my bag down carefully. "Can we talk?" I asked. He gave a short laugh through his nose. "About what?" I felt my chest tighten, but I kept my voice soft. "About what happened. About how things have been. I don't feel like we can keep doing this." He stared ahead, not quite looking at me. Right. Just that. Right. 1 word. And already I felt myself shrinking. "I'm not trying to start a fight," I said. Could have fooled me. There it was, the door closing. I tried again. I told him I felt disrespected when arguments went on for hours. I told him I could not keep being the only place his anger went. I told him leaving to stay with my mom was not something I wanted to keep doing, but sometimes the boat felt unbearable when he was angry. His jaw tightened. He took another drink. "So now I make my own home unbearable?" His own home. I noticed the phrase immediately. Not our home. His. I should have stopped there. Maybe some part of me did. Maybe that was the moment my body understood before my heart did. But I still tried. "I live here too," I said quietly. He turned then and looked at me properly. His face was flat. No softness, no shame, no concern. "You live here because I let you." The words hit me so hard, I did not answer right away. For a second, all I could hear was the water moving softly outside the boat. That same sound I used to love. That same sound that once made the place feel peaceful. I looked around at the tiny kitchen. The narrow walkway, the sofa where I had slept badly so many nights, the little pieces of myself I had tucked into that space over 2 years. My toiletries, my clothes, my books, my routines, my bills, my life. I had cleaned that boat. I had cooked in it. I had cried in it. I had paid bills for it. I had worn his ring inside it. But with one sentence, he reminded me that none of it truly belonged to me. Not if he was angry, not if he wanted power, not if he decided I needed to be put back in my place. Safety there was not something I had. It was something he allowed. I felt something inside me pull away from him. Not loudly, not bravely, just quietly, like a hand letting go of a rope. "I'm leaving," I said. He leaned back, still cold, still cruel in that controlled way that made my skin prickle. "Go," he said. "I want you to go. This is my home, not yours." That was the sentence that did it. Not because I had never heard him say cruel things before. I had, plenty of times. But this one was different. This one stripped everything down. It told me exactly where I stood. I was not his partner in that moment. I was not his fiancé. I was not the woman he had asked to marry him on a beach in Greece. I was someone he could remove from his space when I stopped being useful. For a few seconds, I just stood there. Then I stopped trying to explain. I stopped trying to be understood. I stopped trying to find the right arrangement of words that would make him see how much he was hurting me. There were no right words. Not that night. Maybe not ever. So I turned away and went to gather a few things. I did not plan to take much. I was not thinking clearly enough for that. I just knew I needed to get off the boat before the cold anger became something louder, before he pulled me back into another endless argument, before I lost the small piece of resolve I had finally found. I grabbed my toothbrush, my cleanser, a few toiletries from the tiny bathroom area, little things, practical things, things that made leaving feel temporary enough that I could still do it. Then I saw the pink vibrator by the sink. He had bought it for me about a year earlier. It was mine. Small, private, stupidly ordinary. And in that moment, after he had told me the home was his, after he had made me feel like everything around me existed only by his permission, I put it in my bag. He could keep the boat. He could keep the furniture. He could keep the version of the story where I was ungrateful and dramatic and impossible to love properly. But this one small thing felt like mine, so I took it. Then I walked toward the door. I walked toward the door with my bag on my shoulder, and my heart beating so hard it felt like it was trying to get out before I did. I was not thinking clearly anymore, not in full sentences, not in plans. My mind had narrowed down to one simple instruction: leave. Just leave. The boat felt smaller than it ever had. The walls seemed closer, the ceiling seemed lower. Even the familiar little sounds of the water outside felt distant, like they belonged to a world I had almost reached but was not allowed to enter yet. I kept my eyes on the door. I did not want to look back at him. I did not want to see his face and lose my nerve. I did not want to hear another accusation, another cold sentence, another reminder that this was his home, and I only existed inside it because he allowed me to. I just wanted to get out. The door was right there. One step, then another. I could feel the colder air coming through the opening. I could see the towpath outside. I could see the world beyond the boat, ordinary and quiet, with people walking past like nothing was happening. Their lives were moving normally just a few feet away from mine, and for one strange second, that almost made everything feel unreal. I was almost out. Then I heard him move. Not walk. Run. On land, footsteps are just footsteps. On a narrow boat, they shake the whole world around you. The floor shifted under the weight of him coming after me. The walls seemed to catch the sound and throw it forward. Every heavy step moved through my body before I even turned around. I knew instantly that he had seen me take something. Or maybe he had just realized I was actually leaving. Either way, the sound of him coming toward me made my stomach turn cold. "Leave that." His voice cracked through the narrow space behind me. I froze for half a second. "That's not yours," he shouted. I turned just enough to see him coming down the walkway. He was tall, 6'4". I am not tiny, I am 5'11", but in that cramped space with him drunk and furious and moving fast, he seemed enormous, too close, too solid, like he filled every inch of the boat behind me. My hand tightened around the strap of my bag. I knew what he meant. The pink vibrator. That small, private, ridiculous thing sitting in my bag like it had somehow become contraband. I should have dropped it. Maybe that is what some people would say. Maybe that is what a smarter version of me would have done if this were only about an object. But it was not only about an object. It had stopped being about that the second he told me the home was his. It had stopped being about that the second I understood that even the life I had built there could be taken away from me with one sentence. That tiny thing in my bag felt like the last proof that I still had the right to take something of myself with me. So I did not drop it. I turned back toward the door and tried to step up. That was when he grabbed me. Not gently, not by the arm exactly at first. His hand caught my bag, yanking at the strap hard enough to pull my shoulder backward. My body jerked, half inside and half outside. One foot braced near the doorway and the other trying to find balance. "Leave it," he said again. "That is not yours." "Let go," I said. My voice sounded smaller than I wanted it to. "I'm leaving." "No," he snapped. "Not with that." The doorway of the boat was narrow. Too narrow. I was trapped in the small frame of it, with the outside in front of me and him behind me. I could see the towpath. I could see people walking nearby, not far away, close enough that if I shouted, they might hear me. For 1 second, the thought flashed through my mind. Scream. Call for help. Say something. But I did not. I have asked myself, why, so many times since then. Why did I not scream? Why did I not shout to the people outside? Why did I not make the moment visible to someone else? I think part of me was embarrassed. I think part of me was frozen. And I think part of me was still trained to protect him from the consequences of his own behavior. I was afraid that if strangers saw him like that, if he felt humiliated, if I made him look like the kind of man who chased his fiancé through a boat over a pink vibrator, he would get worse. Fear does not always make you loud. Sometimes it makes you obedient. Sometimes it makes you quiet when every sane part of you should be screaming. He pulled at the bag again. I held on. My fingers dug into the strap. My shoulder burned. I could feel the weight of him behind me, feel his anger pressing into the small space. He was saying things, but not all of them landed clearly. My own heartbeat was too loud. The boat felt like it was tilting beneath us. "Why would you take that, Omaita?" he demanded. "What the fuck is wrong with you?" "Let go," I said again. I hated how close I was to pleading. "I just want to leave. You don't get to take whatever you want." That sentence hit something in me. Because that was what it was really about. Not the vibrator, not the money, not who had bought what. Permission, ownership, control. He did not want me to leave with something he had decided belonged to him, or maybe something he had decided I had no right to take unless he allowed it. And Standing there, stuck in the doorway with his hand on my bag, I realized he was not just trying to get the object back. He was stopping me from leaving. The thought made panic rise in my chest. I pulled forward. He yanked back. Hard. So hard that my body snapped backward before I could catch myself. The back of my head hit the door frame with a dull crack. Not loud. Not cinematic. Not the kind of sound that makes everyone stop and stare. Just a blunt, sickening knock that sent white light across my vision for a second. Everything disappeared. Then came back, too bright. The door frame. His face. The strap twisted in my hand. The cold air outside. The people still walking past like the world had not just split open. It was not enough to bleed. It was enough to understand. For a moment, I did not move. The pain spread across the back of my head, sharp and heavy at the same time. My whole body felt shocked, like it could not decide whether to fight, run, or collapse. I remember touching nothing, saying nothing, just standing there with this awful ringing stillness inside me. He had pulled me back. He had hurt me. Over that. Over a thing so small it should have meant nothing. And somehow, in that moment, it meant everything. Because it showed me exactly where the line was. Or rather, it showed me that the line I thought existed had never really protected me. Before that, I had told myself he yelled, but he did not hit me. He scared me, but he did not hurt me. He trapped me in conversations, but he did not physically trap me. I had built so many little walls of justification, so many careful distinctions, just to keep loving him. Then my head hit the doorframe, and every one of those walls cracked. He wrestled the bag from my grip enough to get inside it. I was too stunned to stop him properly. He dug through it, found the pink vibrator, and pulled it out like he had uncovered evidence of some terrible crime. Then he threw it behind him. It hit something inside the boat with a small plastic sound. A pathetic sound, almost nothing, and that almost made it worse. He got close to my face. "Why the fuck would you take that?" he shouted. "What the fuck is wrong with you?" I stared at him. I do not remember what I said, if I said anything. All I could think was, "You just hurt me over this." Not because I had attacked him, not because I had threatened him, not because I had done anything that required force, because I tried to leave with a small pink thing he thought he had the right to take back. My hands started shaking first, then my legs, then my whole body. It came over me all at once, this cold, uncontrollable trembling. I could not make it stop. I was still in the doorway, still too close to him, still too aware of the fact that he was between me and the inside of the boat, and I was between him and the outside world. I began to cry. Not dramatic sobbing at first, just tears spilling out before I could organize them. My body was reacting before my mind had language for what had happened. He was still angry for a few seconds, still saying things, still asking why I had taken it, why I would do that, why I had to make everything worse. But then he saw me shaking, and just like that, he changed. His voice softened, his face shifted. The rage drained into panic or guilt, or maybe just fear of what his rage had finally looked like from the outside. He reached for me. I flinched. That made something cross his face, something almost wounded, as if my flinching hurt him more than his hands on my bag had hurt me. "Come here," he said. I did not want to, but I also did not know how to get out of the doorway without moving past him, without making another choice that might set him off. So, when he pulled me into a hug, I stood there stiff and shaking while his arms wrapped around me. "I'm sorry," he said. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to." For one tiny second, the old part of me wanted to collapse into that apology. The part that loved him. The part that wanted him to become safe again. The part that knew this softer voice and had mistaken it so many times for proof that the worst was over. But then he kept talking. I'm sorry, but why would you take that? My body went cold. I only did that because you grabbed something that wasn't yours. There it was. The apology with a door in it. A way out for him, a way back in for blame. He held me like he was comforting me from something someone else had done. And while his arms were around me, I understood with a clarity that felt almost cruel. He was not sorry he had scared me. He was sorry I was reacting to it. He was sorry there might be consequences. He was sorry the moment had become too obvious to deny. But even then, even with me shaking in his arms, he still needed the story to end with my mistake. I had taken something. I had made him angry. I had caused the reaction. If I had not done that, he would not have done what he did. That was the shape of every apology he had ever given me. I just finally saw it without the fog. And standing there, with the back of my head aching and the cold air still coming through the open door, I realized I did not want to convince him anymore. I did not want to explain why pulling me back was wrong. I did not want to prove that I had a right to leave. I did not want to argue over who owned the stupid pink vibrator lying somewhere behind him. I wanted distance. I wanted my mom. I wanted air. I wanted to never feel that trapped again. For the first time, the thought was not quiet. It was not buried. It was not something I pushed away because I loved him. It was clear. I had to leave him. I told him I wanted to break up. The words came out quieter than I expected. I had imagined in some distant version of this moment that if I ever ended things, I would have a speech. I would finally say everything I had swallowed. I would tell him about every night I sat beside him performing agreement while my body begged for sleep. I would tell him how small I had become inside that boat. I would tell him that love should not feel like managing someone else's anger with both hands while trying not to drop your own sanity. But when the moment came, I did not have a speech. I barely had a voice. I want to break up, I said. He stared at me like I had slapped him. For a second, I saw the shock before the anger could cover it. Then his face changed again, moving through disbelief, hurt, irritation, panic. I knew those shifts too well. I knew how quickly his pain could turn into accusation. I knew how easily he could make me feel responsible for comforting him through the consequences of what he had done to me. So, before he could pull me into another cycle, I reached for my phone. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. I called my mom. The second I heard her voice, something inside me cracked. Until then, I had been holding myself together with pure instinct. Get out. Stay calm. Do not make him angrier. Do not cry too much. Do not give him another reason to say you are hysterical. But my mom said my name, just my name. And suddenly, I was not able to pretend I was fine. I told her I needed to leave. I do not remember exactly what I said. I know my voice was breaking. I know I was trying to explain too much and not enough at the same time. I know I kept looking at the door, at the narrow space around me, at him standing there, at the place where that pink vibrator had been thrown like it mattered more than my fear. My mom did not ask me to justify it. She did not ask whether I was sure. She just told me to come. That saved me in a way I did not fully understand until later. Because if she had hesitated, if she had asked too many questions, if she had told me to calm down and think, I might have weakened. I might have let him talk. I might have let myself be pulled into the apology, the explanation, the version where he was sorry, but I had provoked him. Instead, I left. Actually left. Not stormed out so he could cool down. Not went to my mom's until things settled. Not took space so we could talk later. I left. The air outside felt unreal, cold against my face, too open after the tightness of the boat. My head still hurt. My shoulder hurt. My whole body felt like it was buzzing from the inside. I remember walking away and fighting the urge to turn around, Not because I wanted to go back, but because some part of me still expected him to follow. Every step away from the boat felt both impossible and necessary. I had left before, but every other time, some part of me was waiting to return. I would tell myself we both needed space. I would tell myself he would apologize properly this time. I would tell myself the good version of him would come back and we could start again. This time was different. This time, my body knew before my heart did. At my mom's house, I did not feel free right away. I wish I could say I arrived and immediately felt strong. I wish I could say I blocked him, took off the ring, and never doubted myself for a second. That would be a cleaner story, a more satisfying one. But that is not what happened. What happened was messier. I cried. Then I went numb. Then I cried again. I slept in pieces. I checked my phone even when I did not want to. I replayed the moment at the door until I felt sick. I touched the back of my head over and over, as if the pain there could confirm that I had not imagined it. And still, I missed him. That is the part people do not always understand. Leaving someone who scares you does not mean every feeling disappears. It does not mean the love switches off. It does not mean you stop remembering the gentle mornings, the jokes, the way he held your hand, the proposal on the beach, the version of him who looked at you like you were the only person who had ever understood him. I miss that version. I miss the man from Greece. I miss the man who made me tea. I miss the man who could be so soft after being so cruel that I kept confusing relief with love. But every time I started to miss him too much, another memory came in behind it. His footsteps shaking the boat. His voice shouting, "That's not yours!" The doorway around me. The people outside I did not call to. The strap of my bag cutting into my shoulder. The dull crack of my head hitting the frame. His hands digging through my bag. The pink vibrator hitting something behind him. His face close to mine, furious over an object, while I stood there shaking because he had just hurt me. And then, the apology. That apology was what stayed with me most. Not because it was comforting, because it was not. "I'm sorry, but..." Those words kept echoing in my head. "I'm sorry, but you shouldn't have taken it." "I'm sorry, but I only did that because you grabbed something that wasn't yours." "I'm sorry, but if you hadn't done that, I wouldn't have reacted that way." The but told me everything. It told me he still needed me to carry part of the blame. It told me that even when he crossed a line, he would build a little bridge back to my behavior and ask me to meet him there. It told me that if I stayed, every future apology would have the same shape. He would hurt me. Then he would hold me. Then he would explain why I had made it happen. A few days later, I gave him the ring back. I wish I could say it felt empowering. Mostly it felt devastating. That ring had meant something to me. I had looked at it in Greece and seen a future. A flawed future maybe, but still a future. I had imagined a wedding, a life, maybe a home that felt steadier one day, maybe a version of us that had survived the hard part and come out better on the other side. Giving it back felt like returning a future I had almost convinced myself I could survive. But survival is not the same as love. And fear is not a normal price to pay for commitment. When I handed it back, I was not suddenly healed. I was not suddenly certain about every feeling. Part of me still hurt for him. Part of me still wanted him to understand, really understand, what he had done. Part of me wanted the impossible apology, the one with no but in it, the one where he would say, "I scared you, I hurt you. That was my choice. You did not deserve it." But I do not think I needed that apology to leave anymore. That was the difference. For so long, I had waited for him to validate my pain before I allowed myself to trust it. I had waited for him to admit something was wrong before I believed something was wrong. I had waited for the person hurting me to give me permission to stop being hurt. I did not want to wait anymore. So yes, technically, the final straw was a pink vibrator. I know how it sounds. I know it is strange, maybe even darkly funny from a distance. After 2 years of drinking, shouting, cold silences, emotional tests, ruined memories, and nights where I had to leave the boat just to breathe, the thing that finally ended my engagement was a small pink object he had bought me a year earlier. But that is not really what ended us. What ended us was the moment I tried to walk away and he decided I was not allowed to take something he thought he owned. What ended us was the moment he used his strength to pull me back. What ended us was the moment my head hit the doorframe and all my excuses hit with it. What ended us was the apology that still found a way to blame me. The vibrator did not destroy our relationship. It revealed it. It showed me, in one terrifying, ridiculous, unforgettable moment, what my future would look like if I married him. A life where love came with conditions, where safety depended on his mood, where even leaving required permission, where every injury would be followed by an explanation of how I had caused it. I did not leave because of a toy. I left because he showed me that if I tried to walk away, he might decide I was not allowed to. And once I saw that, I could not unsee it. The ring was supposed to prove he wanted a future with me. But that little pink thing showed me what that future would cost. So I chose not to pay it.